So, hi, everybody. It's great to be back again. And this week we've got Chin Pitak, who is the Senior Vice President of Hospitality at Jmart Group Holdings in Bangkok. And it's a leading portfolio of luxury resorts, lifestyle hotels, and community malls. So, uh, Kunshin has over 20 years of global luxury hospitality with some really top international brands, legacy brands, which you'll tell us a little bit about in a minute. And he's actually recognized as one of the top five general managers, and now actually has made this transition into asset management with this sort of owner first philosophy. And he also serves as the guest faculty at the Dusitani College, where he developed the owner's playbook, which is a very useful tool because it helps the leaders sort of align their operational excellence to financial disciplines. So, Kun Chin, thanks a lot for joining. And why don't you just give us a little introduction? Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into hotels.
Sure. Likewise, glad to be here,คุณวิชัดสวัสดีครับ So Chin is my name. I have 21 years. I'd say 20 and a bit of years in hospitality management. So I break my career into three chapters. The very first one is when I build a foundation. I work in the global hospitality brands like Four Seasons, Peninsula, Sofitel. That's where I learned the luxury hospitality from the inside. And I think that helping me building the foundation that I need these days. Then in the second chapter, I move on. I call that the transition period. So I I took the very first international leadership as the GM at Sofitel and M Gallery in Luang Prabang, Laos. Then later I moved to minor hotels in the capacity of the general manager for Anantara Angkor in Siem Reap. And I ran the property through COVID. So that's the very first time I call that transition because that's the very first time that you got locked down in a country, in the developing country, and you basically working on your own thing. You manage the cash burn. You don't have a lot of cash to burn at the time. I admit. You negotiate the contract, so basically you delay the whole payment. But most importantly, you have to keep the property alive as well, alive in terms of people, alive in terms of guest activity, and most importantly to be safe and secure during the crisis time. And then I have the opportunity to be in charge of Anantara Chiang Mai pretty much at the end of the COVID time. I took over the beautiful property set on the Ping River that used to be the British consulate. So
Okay.
that is the time I I was fascinated and interested in I would say that's the gentle tension between the operator and the owner interest. So that is my transition time. And most recently, for 7 months, I took over the role as Senior Vice President, Hospitality in JMart Group Holding. So looking at the portfolio of 13 hotels, shopping malls, and wellness center. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. And it's still a learning curve for me. New thing, but not so new. I start repping the owner since I I took over the Anantara Chiang Mai in the second year when when the asset manager finished her contract. There was Kun Soraya Bunna. She finished her contract, so pretty much I have to act between the operator and the owner, not only the GM but also run the property as semi. I call that semi asset manager as well. I prep the owner presentation. I look into the clause of the HMA and explain to them because JMAT was new to hotel investment at the time. So that's when I built my foundation as the asset manager. So when I took over the role, I'm not the new guy at JMart, and at the same time, I'm not so green on asset management.
That's very interesting. And from all these different brands, right? And I know Minor is also very kind of demanding in the sense that bottom line and everything is very important. Which takeaways do you think, in terms of like low hanging fruit? What did you? Which company do you think was the one that taught you the most about the strategic sort of asset management side?
Wow, I have to be careful with replying this question. You have to share the love equally, just in case. Uh, I would say the most interesting one will be minor hotels, where you learn the number. They have the motto called entrepreneurial spirit. So everyone act as not just the business unit leader, but you act as you own the asset. That's your own investment. That's your own legacy. So that's how you know the number. Not only how to drive the commercial top line, but you understand through the line. You understand to the bottom. Not only GOP, but helping out the owners, which some property happen to be minor themselves, to make sure that you maximize on the return, on the long term return.
Right.
So I would say it's minor from what I learned the latest.
So what's interesting for me is that you then sort of had this shift from from the operational management into the strategic asset management, and then you took on a bit of executive education. So tell us a little bit about how you created this owner's playbook and for the Dusit College, and what kind of inspired the programs that you because obviously you saw gaps, like when I was at when I was at the Hotel Icon in Hong Kong. It was a teaching research hotel. So I knew where the gaps were between what we need to understand as an operator, an owner's rep, with the stakeholders, and then what they were teaching people in college. So I'm interested to hear what sort of inspired your programs and where you thought the gaps in leadership or the financial understanding, if you like, that they are designed to fill.
I'd say that, I mean, from what I found with the playbook series, that's what I call, all the GM are brilliant at what they do. I mean, they have the good thing in certain way, certain aspect, but sometimes the brilliance need a structured box. Everyone saying that I want to be thinking outside the box, or I want to go outside the frame, but before you go outside the box or have that initiative ideas, I think you need to understand what kind of box that you're in first. What kind of, what kind of material, how big is the box, what kind of structure is made of. So I think that's important. So that's when I come up with the playbook series. I see the opportunity because initially I was teaching only marketing. That's my background in commercial. So I was teaching marketing, and then you sort of have to look for the market as well. Same like when you run the hotel, you have to look for the opportunity in the blue ocean. So everyone have their own playbook, their own course. The spa manager, they have the spa management. The F&B guy, they have the restaurant management. They have the course management. They have something related to every position in the hotel. And I found that they actually, two, originally there was only one. I was running as a GM, so I see the opportunity that, oh, okay, not only the HOD that they have playbook, but the GM should have the playbook as well. So that's why I came up with that hotel general manager course originally, and turned to be the GM's playbook later. And then when I took the role of the asset management, I see that, okay, not only in that scope of of hotel operation, but you have hotel investor as well. So you talk about the family office, you talk about the private equity, you talk about individual owners. So I think these people might need the playbook as well. So I try to come up from different perspective, not only operating the hotel, but investing in the hotel, asset managing the hotel.
Right. And I think that you're right. There's some GMs who come from that sort of um, the position of the guest experience, right? And they're sort of very focused in that area, but and then they tend to leave the financial side to the director, you know, financial manager in the excom team. But I think that often you're right. People are coming up with innovative ideas, but there's obviously a cost sometimes to making that happen. Do you think that a lot of the big brands nowadays, the GM's role has changed a lot because it's more sort of like a playbook, if you like. I mean, to use your coin of phrase. I mean, how much autonomy do these guys have these days?
No, I I think the role of the GM remains the same. You can always remain the same, very much GM that managing the hotel, checking in the guests, welcoming the guests, reading the P&L, running every month, owners meeting. But you will not grow. You stay or you stuck in the very same hotel that you play as a comfort zone. But in order to grow, you have to be I wouldn't call multitasking, but you have to be in the multiverse this day yourself. You have to learn financial concept. You have to learn the look from the owner perspective. You have to be creative as you on top of your own commercial director, for example. So the GM have to be pretty much having the general knowledge that we know, but but you have to go deeper or wider into those general knowledge.
So when you're teaching that and when you develop your playbook, how do you balance the kind of financial and operational concepts with kind of making it practical and actionable for leaders, you know?
You have to be the translator. You have to translate all those financial concepts, the complicated mathematics, into something as simple that the 5 year old would understand. For example, there was one time that we talked about capex investment, million baht, but then you have to be able to translate that into payback period. For example, I came up with a translation that it's not worth investing in these energy saving projects. But if you do that, I told my owner at the time, if you do that, then you get the whole return recovered when you turn 98. Then that sort of silent the entire room. But basically, they kind of get the point.
Yeah. Do you think there's a point where, you know, if you're looking at a property that needs renovating and you know, other hotels have sprung up around. I mean, when I was with Shang in the corporate office, we would go back into cities in China, which were the secondary cities where Shangri-La had opened very early on, you know, like 10 years before anybody else. And then new competitors had come in. So they were looking at upgrading their F&B largely, because obviously the dynamics of the market had changed. So they would look at ROI over a sort of 5 year payback. If you don't renovate, this is what's going to happen to your average check, your average rate. But if you do renovate, you know, there's this return on investment over a 5 year period. The problem now, though, I feel, is that there's so many global issues that you can't really project that far into the future. So how do you get that point across to an owner?
So this day we go ROI as short as 3 years. And that's something I learned from minor hotel as well. Anything above 3 years, they will not just question it, they will cancel the entire project. So I think 3 years still pretty much something forecastable for us as the investor and the hotel operator. So you should look carefully into 2 3 years return. Anything longer than that, I think it's pretty much into the unpredictable factor that we cannot control. And things change rapidly these days. You look at the geopolitical conflicts that we have at the moment, it change basically every day.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's an interesting concept, and also with this talk, we can talk a little bit later about innovation and trends and AI. But just to kind of anchor a little bit back to your role now, specifically as senior vice president of hospitality at Jmart, you're managing for the owner the hotels, the malls, the wellness assets. How do you ensure the sort of guest experience is on point, while at the same time protecting the capital and driving the EBITDA?
Mm, I think not only investor these days, but also the traveler or the hotel guests that we have these days. We call them everything traveler. So they want a little bit of everything all at once. So maybe they're listening to jazz, then hip hop, then classical music, or in 15 minutes. So that is the modern traveler that we've been dealing these days. I think it's important to understand what kind of current uh, traveler trends or situation we have. It's no longer luxury traveler just or adventure traveler just one segmentation alone. They actually combine everything in just one trip, and the trip is as short as 2 to 3 nights. So so the hotel have to have a little bit of both. Of course, you cannot invest in everything just to please this customer, then otherwise the ROI will not be there, right? Or the return will not be as great. But you need to look into your partner as well. I mean, if you can run, for example, Anantara Chiang Mai, you can run luxury service at the perfect level, but you're missing the adventure component. You're missing a little bit of the gastronomy component. You're missing a little bit of the cultural components. Then you have to look for the partner around the city or something nearby. You have to team up with the community around you.
Mm.
So I think
Yeah,
that helps.
that's very interesting. Collaboration with
It is.
try to collaborate. But I think some of your businesses within under that fall under your scope are are some of them just targeting local customers ties exclusively if they're not necessarily hotels?
Wow, we try to get the mix of not only local or Thai, but trying to get international uh, travelers of footfall as well. For example, to the shopping mall. At the moment, one of our shopping mall been doing great because we actually flagged the hotel there recently in September last year. The area is called Kubon in the northeastern part of Bangkok. That jazz community mall, Kubon Green Village, and we have the shopping mall, we have the sports center, we have the community mall itself, we have the wellness center, all in one place. And I think that how we attract people. You can't just be there alone. It has
Yeah,
to be the retail led business mixed use these days in
because
order
it's
to be appealing. Yes. Uh, and I think one nice thing about have international traveler or international clients or customer at your place, they actually pay a little bit more. I mean, anything that they have seen here is something foreign to them, and you pay more. You pay higher dollar or higher power for something foreign in the different country or the different cities.
right. So, in your owner first philosophy, right? You talk about, and I've read some of your work. You talk about the sort of strict enforcement of HSAs. Can you give me an example, give the listeners an example of like a tough decision where this sort of philosophy of yours have made a real impact on the performance of the property? Just give us one. Maybe you could highlight one example.
I have to be careful with this one, but basically you have to understand the HMA very clearly, because that basically your roadmap, because that is your marriage documents between the investor and the operator. So if you don't understand the clause, then you will not understand why the two is getting married. Yeah. For example, one time we have the argument, constructive argument, put it that way, constructive argument, and I was still on the operator side at the time, and we have the constructive argument about the fee, because there was some sort of crisis situation at the hotel. We got the insurance involved in the claim, and we're not quite sure whether the claim should be put there, and that claim become feasible. The operator said yes. The owner said no, you should not. So you fall in between as the middleman to calm down the situation. First of all, you have to understand your HMA clearly, crystally, so you be able to explain to the investor that, hey, according to the HMA, sir, we oblige to pay the fee for that claim. But at the same time, you have to speak or convince the operator as well that, hey, you might be able to charge the fee this time, but that might hurt your relationship when we're going to renew the contract. So we actually end up paying at the discounted rate for the fee for that amount. So I think it's important that you play the role in between when your parents are arguing.
Interesting. If you were in a situation where you're kind of advising the owner, and you don't have to specify which owner here, but just as a general thought, because there are so many multiple brands and tiers of different brands out there operating in the same space under the same kind of umbrella, how does one start to kind of navigate what's best for an owner when it comes to selecting a brand?
Oh, you don't look at the owner, because if you look at the owner purely, then you might end up, select the brand that answer to his or her passion, but not answering to the market. So you need to look into the market first, that what brand is the most suitable. You have to do the brand fit, and then later you have something in mind as three options to propose and convince the owner. You can't let the owner lead on this kind of brand selection, because everyone has different background. Then otherwise you end up with with I would say with the more senior generation with the classic brands, and the younger generation, the upcoming generation will come up with the newer brands that might not be answering the market that you're hunting.
Right, understood. Okay, very interesting. Just moving on to talk a bit about how luxury hospitality is sort of evolving, right? I mean, you talked about the concept of luxury and affordable luxury or adventure luxury, whatever you want to call it. How do you think guest expectations are sort of shifting now, and how should service delivery how do we need to sort of change the way that the models adapt to the changes in guest expectations? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Shifting, yes, shifting from one single expectation or one main expectation. I arrive to Bangkok. I just want to rest. I take the cruise, explore the canal, the temple of Bangkok. Then I have dinner at one of the Thai restaurant or the hotel restaurant, having just tom yum goong, as you know, the top favorite item of Thailand. And that's it. That's a whole experience. That's the whole expectation of the trip. But this day they go even deeper. They want to hear the story of the hotel. They want to hear the story of the community. They don't just want to eat the food. They want to know where the food or the ingredients coming from, who grow that trees, who grow that plants, who actually farm this pork, or who actually farm these prawns. They actually go deeper in the story of the destination. And when it comes to Thailand, which is the heart of the hospitality hub of Asia, their expectation is even higher. So basically, you have to go deep into the story, be able to tell every single point of the story. For example, at the Anantara Chiang Mai, we we move away from all those. Uh, we call that the famous four of the welcome drinks. If you remember correctly, when you were here in Thailand 30 years ago, we served a lot of lemongrass,
Yeah.
rosella tea, uh, bell fruits, butterfly pea. All these four remain the key ingredients for any welcome drinks. And we're still serving that. If you come back to Thailand 30 years, 40 years later, or 10 years from now, they're still serving that. So we've gone away from that completely. We work with a non-alcoholic cocktail bar in Chiang Mai called Intangible, and the guy came up with something a little bit complicated to cook, but it's interesting for the guest, I would say. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you can go and look at the story of our welcome drink in Anantara Chiang Mai page. That will tell you the story of our seasonal welcome drink. So I think that's how we cope with the customer expectation these days. But basically, down to the bottom, the very heart of service in Thailand, or at least to myself, the motto remains: don't let bad hotel happen to good people. So if you believe that your guest is a good people, if you believe that your boss or the investor is a good people, if you believe that your employee or your team is a good people, don't let bad hotel happen to them.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, with my experience, the last hotel I was managing up until about 2023 was in Hotel Icon in Hong Kong.
Huh?
And, that one I opened for the university, and we ran it as a complete kind of you know, independent hotel. But at the same time, it acted as a training resource center for the university, right? So we had this sort of license to experiment with a lot of different um, approaches to how we were serving the guests, what kind of things we were using. And there seemed to be because we were an independent hotel and because we had this higher purpose, if you like, to develop leaders of the future and all that kind of stuff, we were expected to do a lot of prototyping and research, right? With industry partners. In fact, they would come to us and say, "Look, we've developed this product. Would you like to try it?" And we found that there was quite a large segment of our demographic, and they were largely from North America and Europe, that our customers, 80%. Um, they sought out hotels that had sustainable practices. Sustainability was very important with them. So we worked with some people like uniform designers that used recycled uh, products. They used
Yeah,
bamboo.
how interesting.
Yeah, and they also use now that company is actually using AI to do the design, so they can feed in the brand DNA of say one of your products, and then they'll be able to create different renderings of design. So you're not paying for a design fee. So you're kind of using technology to as an advantage. And there was some significant cost savings, and also because it was very durable. So I'm just wondering, with that, it, with that said, do you think that there are a segment of customers that come to your hotels or to Thailand that are looking to see whether a hotel is sustainable and is has the right kind of approach to sustainability, or is it just a bit of greenwashing, do you think, for a lot of them?
There are actually sustainable tourism, and also the tourists who actually interested very much in this part and willing to pay the premium for that.
Right,
And this segmentation also growing as well. We have seen that we have witnessed, or not only at the luxury scale but also at the premium budget scale. But
right.
I have to say that the way that we treat sustainability can be different depending on the hotel budget.
Yeah,
You can't fully invest into solar panel of 10 million baht if your hotel earning is 10 million baht per year.
yeah,
That is not sustainable. I mean, in order to be sustainable, you might need to look into how this is going to pay back to your hotel as the midterm and the long term ROI as well.
yeah,
So I think each hotel have to treat this approach differently. You have to look first of all into your earning, into your budget, and what kind of percentage you're going to spend on this. For example, the small hotel, I always ask them to look back into the changing the bed sheet, or not changing the bed sheet, changing the towel, the play card that they have placed on the room. You can do something nice with that. There are lots of hotels that they have limited budget to spend on this one, and they come up with some token, interesting token that people can take photo. We just not want to have our sustainable policy play their part in the hotel, but we want people to talk about it online as well. So that can be the opportunity, but you have to look smartly into how you play with that.
yeah.
And when you talk sustainability, people always think about the green policy that cut down the straw, cut down the single plastic use, reduce electricity consumption. But you can look into the community as well. How many local people that you're hiring?
Yes.
What kind of local produce that you use in the hotel? Do you have any educational institute in the parameter of 1 to 2 kilometers that you've been working with, for example?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, and it's a bit like your famous four cocktail. Well, a lot of these hotels just have. There's always those sort of low-hanging fruit that everybody does, the bottles and the sheets and all that. But I think to come up with a original idea that adds value is really the key, and I think that's why with Hotel Icon, we were always encouraged to try out new ideas, which is why we did the. And I think the reason the uniform thing worked was because the staff were actually wearing it. It was something that was tangible. They felt part of the process, and then they could tell the guy, "Oh, this is made from plastic bottles or maize or corn or whatever." And I think that was something that definitely shifted people's mindset, or even we had electric vehicles. We prototyped an electric minibus that did the shuttles, that type of thing. So it's actually something more tangible. But I think you're right. There is a lot of the expectations are shifting. Moving on to like digital and technology transformation. I mean, I think there's a lot of kind of gray areas there too. What tools have you seen that have really truly sort of enhanced the guest experience or even the productivity of hotel employees? Have you seen anything that has been put to use in a very creative way or that adds added value?
You read the output of whatever technology is giving you, or the AI data driven reports giving you these days. So
Yeah,
it's not all about how you use it, but it's how you read the analysis.
right.
So I think that's important, and how you use AI as your personal assistant just to support any idea that you have. For example, one time we have the famous hip hop song composer staying at our hotel. So the moment that the team see that this music composer stay at our hotel, this music producer stay at our hotel with his girlfriend, the team not only serve them the champagne, just the normal approach. They serve them the champagne, and they actually have the AI to write the hip hop lyrics about
Oh, wow.
him and his girlfriend visiting the destination. So then not only his girlfriend but him also post about the lyric as well. So I think that's how we make use of that. It's still offline to online to offline because these online contents eventually will lead to any booking transaction very very soon.
Right. I know that there's a lot of talk. I had a couple of podcasts here with some restaurant owners in the UK, where they have got multiple outlets throughout the country, and they've found some real benefits for their chefs with using AI for ordering and menu planning and all that type of thing. They feel that helps them a lot. But I think that there's definitely a lot of talk about it at the moment. We'll have to see how it pans out. But if you've got a very limited budget, is there anything that you've seen that is very creative or unconventional that you think an operator can use to kind of punch above their weight?
Oh, daily dashboard, daily dashboard with with not only generative AI but agentic AI these days they can actually go into your photos, the designated photos, and then come up with the dashboard at the scheduled time, daily basis. So that will save you lots of time and save everyone from the human error that they might have made.
Right,
So that's what we use at our premium budget hotel Sense Hotel at the moment. So every single day, right on time at 9:30, the team will produce the dashboard that everyone can easily understand. What's the pace at the moment, and then we can track how much of the business that we're missing in order to achieve the budget.
okay,
Yeah,
great.
so I think that's useful, but in order to do that precisely and efficiently, you you need to put in the right context. You have to put in the right prompt, and I think it helps everyone because basically we only have the team of 8 at our premium budget hotel. But if you team up with AI, so basically it's you and your AI, so it's a team of 8 times 2. You got 16 people working in the hotel.
Right. Very interesting. Yeah, it's a good point. Looking at, you have this sort of personal interest like I do in, educating leaders and mentoring, and I'm sure you want to grow your own people within the organization. So in that sense, you're kind of shaping the next generation. I mean, people like yourself, 20, 30 years ago, there would be an expat doing your job. It's great to see a local guy who's homegrown, who's representing uh, a brand like you are, which is fantastic. And I think you should be very proud of your achievement. But what qualities do you think will kind of define future leaders, and where do you think that these universities and hotel schools need to really look at their curriculum and say, you know what, we need to focus more on this area or that area? I mean, you said earlier you were teaching marketing, which is very dynamic. It's changing all the time, right? Like revenue management. So, can you give us your views on that?
I think top important in my mind is financial literacy.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the reason most of the people end up working in tourism or in hotel industry. Sometimes you ask the student or the people who already in the industry, why did you choose hotel or why did you choose tourism? Because they hate mathematics.
Mm,
So I think it's crucially important. I mean, you can be the leader in the industry that lots of people hate and don't care so much about mathematics and financial literacy. If you understand clearly P&L and how it works as the roadmap, if you understand the balance sheet and why the cash flow statement is important, you will have a long way in this industry.
yeah,
Everything can be translated into percentage, into portion, into the ratio, something that you can make use of.
very,
And
very. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
and I think it's important for the next generation to understand that hey, working in a hotel is not all about speaking the foreign language, smiling to the guests, looking into your NPS score, but everything should be translated into numbers. And I
Yeah,
think it's crucial because the investment is ultimately involve number. That's why we
yeah,
invest. So if you just get back to the investor with lots of smiles and high score of employee engagement survey, that doesn't work.
right, right. I mean, I used to remember, the different educational backgrounds, if you like, of many of the employees that I had. I mean, when I was working either Indonesia or in China or in Bangkok, wherever it was, you'd have this sort of stream of outlet managers, let's say, who had kind of worked their way up through the system, who'd had no clue about what you've just spoken about. They didn't really understand even how the average check came about, and let alone looking at a P&L for their outlet. So there was a lot of educate, and then you had the other group that were the ones who had come from higher education, who understood that but didn't really know how to apply it to a real life situation. So there was this sort of dilemma where you know students or executives who were trying to kind of apply their thinking. How do you think that you want to be able to put that across within your company now that you work for? I mean, are you planning to have some mini crash courses to educate your outlet managers or your team? How do you think you could go about it?
So basically, they have to run their fundamental correctly first. I mean, whatever you've been doing, you have to be good at that first in order to explore the other area, or before you cross expose yourself into other area. But but basically, you have three groups of people mainly working in the hotel. You have the group of the A&G people, you have the HR and the finance people, the admin people, and the second group you have the commercial people, the sales people, the marketing people, and then the third group you have the operation people. So we working on the triangular relationship here. So we should have we should have the HR and the finance who understand marketing universe, and
Right,
then you should have the commercial people who understand the operation universe.
right, right,
And then last but not least, you should have the operation people who understand how HR and finance works. If you work on these metrics perfectly and completely, then you have a perfect hotel, and you have a very much ever growing organization, that not only one person doing one silo department or division, but you have the sales who can actually understand, or the commercial people who understand operation. By understanding these two, you're ready to grow in a higher position.
so if you're in the position of GM and you're recruiting, right? Let's say it's an opening, or you've taken over the help of a property. Sometimes you inherit people that are already there, right? But if you want to build this perfect, golden ratio, if you like, of the ideal team, sometimes it's not quite that easy to achieve. How do you kind of go about making those adjustments, those nuances to try and achieve that, what you've just talked about? How do you get that ideal team when, I mean, it's easier when you're opening because you're recruiting the people and you're interviewing them. But if you take something over, and there's always those people who are the holy cows or the favored few, how does one deal with that?
We in people industry could Richard. So basically, you not only get into the organization and look at the official organizational chart. You get there and you try to understand how the unofficial organizational chart work as well. That's how you understand the people structure in that company. You might have the assistant purchasing manager that's so powerful because she or he been there for a long time, and make the crucial decision on top of the finance manager. That's how it works, and I
Yeah.
think you have seen that before. So I think in order to be great and to blend in, you have to understand that first of all, and secondly, you have to point out to the people that hey, you are as good as the people around you, or you the average of your environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a very valid point because I managed a couple of properties where they were JVs, and where the management company had a 49% share, and the joint venture local owner had a 51% share. So in some of those ex compositions, the owner had their own people, like purchasing, um, finance, housekeeping, and HR was a big one. They like to put their own people in there, and sometimes they would just pluck people in from nowhere. You never knew the background of these people. So you're right; it's not an ideal world, but you just have to sometimes make the best of it. But that's a good point.
And I think it's important uh, for the recruitment part as well. That
Mm,
if, for example, I talk about the you are as good as your average environment, but if you're getting the A grade student into the
yeah,
room or into the class full of people who are actually good at sports, so you actually plug that person wrongly at the first place. So you have to
absolutely.
go back and look at your HR or recruitment process. That's been wrong since the very beginning. You can't just work it out successfully.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very good point. So looking ahead, just to before we wrap up, what sort of bold or I mean, you're a free thinking spirit, I can tell, and you're probably somewhat unconventional in your ideas sometimes. So, what do you think the industry is currently kind of overlooking that will define the future? When in 10 years from now, when you're looking at where the industry went, how what do you think we seem to be on this sort of cusp of some big changes going ahead? So what kind of like conventional ideas do you think the industry is looking at?
Succession movement, nothing lasts forever. You can't be sure that whatever state that you're in today will be your state tomorrow or the next year. And we talk a lot about the change, but we have to look into the change at the top as well. I'm talking about leadership change. So this might not sound right, but you should have the strong shadow committee with you, meaning you should have the eyes for for grooming your number two or your number 2.5 at all time. You have to be ready to move on because you don't know when you're going to move on, and lots of people stuck there in the post for too long because no one, not because they don't want to leave, but no one ready to step up. So for example, I mean, if I suppose that at one point you might want to move on from the Icon Hotel, for example, but they say, hey, Taiko, you cannot move on because we don't have the suitable number two at your caliber to replace you. So you have to keep grooming your number two all the time. Doesn't matter in what role, the manager, the director, the GM, the hotel manager. You have to be ready to have someone to replace you, either in your organization or you have to find that in the network. And and we like having the new guides because that person will have the fresh eyes and the new energy.
That's a good point. I mean, because at Icon, because I had multiple roles, I was teaching
Cup,
about 25% of the time, and then we set up a consulting division within the School of Hotel Management and Icon. So we did consulting as well. So it was like wearing three hats. And then in the end, when I moved on, my number two actually, who was more like the financial controller there, because he came through the same poly U, he took over. So it was a kind of a nicely way to bake the cake,
cup.
and then they try as much as possible to use the place like a greenhouse to develop, their own people, but at the same time to to move them out into the industry. So we were challenged often to not have people stay too long deliberately. There was one of the KPIs. They didn't want like people being there for donkey's years, but we had to kind of move people out into higher jobs. But I agree with you. I think if you reach a point where you're no longer learning anything or making a contribution, it's probably time to move on. I agree with that. Yeah.
But I think you agree with me, Kun Richard. You can't you can't explore and expose that idea to numbers of people who actually bought the house, build a
Yeah.
family, having the kids at the school, having their social life in one particular destination for more than 8 to 10 years. That that idea will be very, very fatal to them.
Yeah. I think the other thing is, I mean, just to use my son as an example, he's working in Tampa, Florida,
Okay.
and he came out of hotel school in Orlando, and he's now working. He's worked in New York and Orlando, and now he's in Tampa, and he's working with a brand there, a big international brand, but I won't mention the name. But
Oh, okay.
he's been in the role for about 4 years now, as a front office manager, kind of waiting for somebody to move on. And and I keep saying to him, I think it's time you should make the switch now. If they're keeping you in the same role for that length of time, it's kind of like dead men's shoes. You're just waiting for the next guy to move on. So, do you think there's an ideal time for young people if they're growing in the industry to move on? Is it 2 years or is it 18 months or
Move when you're ready. Move when you're ready. You know your. I mean, everyone have their own time. Everyone play on their own time. You move when you're ready, but not because you believe you're ready. Don't move. You
okay,
move when other people knows that you're ready. Then
okay,
you
okay,
move. Yeah, so you need a good balance of judgment. So basically, I think the new competitive age, the new competitive advantage in hospitality is not just the quality manager or the quality of your GM, but I think it's actually the bench behind you.
yeah, I think so, and I think you do see some people who I'm sure you've worked with who were kind of like overly ambitious, they weren't quite ready, but they thought they deserved more. I think that's quite prevalent in our industry too. They feel that they're ready, and that, and I think sometimes they need to be a bit more grounded and brought back to earth. So there's both situations there, I guess, exist.
But don't you think, Kunvishat, they're overly confident because someone make them believe that. For example,
Yes,
you have lots of hotel school brochure that they need to recruit people as well, right? Then they have to have the strong admission as well. So I respect that. But in lots of school hotel school brochure these days they say that you graduate from here and you be the manager in 2 years.
yeah,
So they already have that perception even before they step foot into the school that hey,
yeah.
after I graduate, when I turn 24, I have to be the manager. If you don't allow me to be the manager, it's not me being wrong, it's you being wrong.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. I mean, and that's why I keep saying to my son. I mean, and I have another son who's now 18. He's just started at Oxford Brookes. He's doing hospitality management too. And I keep reminding him, I said it took me 16 years to get from graduating to become a GM, and that was on a journey of 4 different countries. I moved,
Uh,
worked my way up through the system. But yeah, it's a very interesting industry we're in, and I really I'm very grateful to you. I think it's been really really interesting. People will get a lot from what you've shared,
Thank you.
and I really appreciate your wisdom, and I wish you all the best of luck with JMark Group. And maybe I'd love to come back to you in say 6 months time and do a kind of where are we now, what have you managed to achieve, what are the changes. Be very interesting, but I'd love to keep in touch with you, Chin.
Sure,
And thank
appreciate that.
yeah, but thanks ever so much, and be happy to keep in touch and share any of the stuff that we've talked about.
Thanks for having me as well. You have a nice Wednesday.
Okay, thanks a lot.
ขอบคุณครับ